Hello, welcome to Jason, the Midwest Traveler, and I am now traveling to another presidential museum, this time the Dwight Eisenhower Presidential Museum and Library here in Abilene, Kansas. Kind of cool. We have a president that lived in Kansas. It's kind of where he grew up, in Abilene. So it definitely probably the most famous Kansan we have. And like I said, he was president from 52 to 60. He was also the head general of the Allies during World War II. So he's a war hero and president. So it's really cool to name Ike Eisenhower a Kansan. We consider him one of us. And so, yeah, and like his presidential, I don't think people talk about as enough as his war, hero effort. But he's very popular, won 2 terms, won by landslides. When he came home from World War II, we had huge parades here in Kansas, just for him anyway. So very popular here in the state of Kansas. So I'm gonna go check out the museum.
No way!
I'm taking a little video of the where the Dwight Eisenhower Museum and Library are. Basically, when you go through the right there, that building in front of me is the visitor center. You buy your ticket. Basically, you buy your ticket, and then there's like 5 buildings you can visit. There's the Eisenhower home there. I didn't buy a ticket for that, like I said, but you can go, they do a tour, and it's a timed, you have to pick a time, and I don't really want to pick a time to have to wait. I'd rather just go to the museum. But anyways, you walk over there, and then you can walk over here, and there's the museum itself, which I'll be going in pretty soon. And then you can also come over here to the library. That's the presidential library. I'm gonna pan back over here, and there is where his body, him and his wife, are rested there in the chapel. So those are kind of the buildings that you can walk to. So it's an interesting museum in that you have to walk around and get to the museum from the visitor center. Like the Truman Museum, the visitor center is kind of connected to the museum. You never have to go outside. This one, you go outside to see the different things. But it is nice that you have the home on the same property as the museum, so you can see where a lot of times you have to travel to see the home of the president anyway. So that's a little kind of snapshot of what it looks like when you visit. I'm right outside Ike Eisenhower's boyhood home here in Abilene, Kansas. Yeah, this is the house behind me that he grew up in. I think he had like 5 brothers or 4 brothers, and I think all the rooms were in the upstairs, which is kind of crazy. Not a lot of room for that many kids, him and his brothers and his parents. Anyway, so I don't have a ticket to go inside, but that's the look of it. I'm back home from my trip to Abilene, Kansas to see the Dwight Eisenhower Library and Museum. It was about 2.5 hour drive, so a fairly good drive back and forth. I spent a good hour, an hour and a half there at the museum itself. Again, I could have waited for like a tour of the house, but I've been there once before, and it's probably been 6 years since I've been there. So the second time going there, and so I didn't really feel like I need to go see the house again or get a tour, because you have to wait for a certain time and you have to book it kind of, and wait for that. I like just being free to go see whatever I want. And I didn't go in the library. There's not much in the library usually to really go see. Most of the thing I want to see is in the museum anyway. So, but yeah, overall, really great museum. Just like I remembered it last time. A little different though. I think they changed museums. They must change things around every once in a while, because this looked a little different on some points that I can remember. But overall, really cool. Learning again more about Ike or Dwight Eisenhower. He was actually born in Denison, Texas, but then grew up in Abilene, Kansas. So was born in Texas, but Abilene's really his childhood home. That's why they got the museum there and library and all that. And he's even says that, Abilene's very important to his life. But interesting, a very interesting person. I mean, and again, it's so cool because I'm from Kansas, and it's so cool to have this guy who was the president of the United States from our state, also was the Allied commander or whatever of World War II, which is really cool as well. Say this guy is a really great guy, did a lot of cool things, had a really interesting life. And like very proud to say we got Ike Eisenhower as the Kansan, and I'm really proud of that, being from Kansas, that we got someone like him representing us. Like I said, probably the most famous person from the state of Kansas. I would say him and Amelia Earhart are like two people we're probably most proud of. And I've been to Amelia Earhart's museum as well in Atchison, which isn't too far away. So I've seen both of them. But anyways, yeah, interesting looking through, and visually really great museum. Love how they have these big, if you see in the video, these big canvases of pictures, really great stuff to kind of look at in the big picture. And then there's display cases of different things, and you can read what they are and what's going on. And it really kind of great job of painting this picture chronologically, of course, of his life, because you see these little sections, and it'll say like what year and what happened. Kind of, it kind of gives you a little bit of what this section's about. And so you can go from section to section and go chronologically through his life. I thought really well organized, and overall visual really good. There's a couple touch screens here and there. You can like look at specific things. That's always cool to look at. And there's like 3 different sections that have some video that you can sit down and watch some video about like World War II or about his presidency or about whatever they want. So always like that, different things to look and see is always good in these kind of museums. Yeah, I really learn a lot when I go to museums. I love museums because there's something about being at a museum. And so, I mean, I read books, but being at the museum, getting to see the things, seeing the pictures, really getting the whole, you get in a very, compared to reading a book in a short manner, you get to have a pretty good picture of what their life is and who they are. And I really like that about here. And I really learned a lot, like going through there. Eisenhower, of course, yeah, I said, grew up in Abilene. After high school, he went to West Point. He played football at Army, so he's a really good football player, actually. But even after he was graduated, he ended up coaching at Army too, a little bit, some other places. So really into football. But and it's funny, West Point, he was like a middle of the road student. Like he graduated like 61st out of 140 or something like that. So yeah, he wasn't like the most disciplined, best student at that time. But then after he'd done with West Point, and then he took his career a little more seriously, and then he really wanted to, really go up the ranks of the Army, and he went to some like officer class that really is like for people that really want to, I think, raise up the ranks and be, commanders like that. And he finished first in his class when he did that. So that's when he really worked hard and studied and wanted to be the best. And in his career, he just kind of, went up the ranks. He was just very ambitious and very hardworking, and worked really well with everybody, and was very well liked, I think. And that's why he went up. When he was at West Point, he met Mammy, his future wife, They met there and was married like 9 months later. And they had two children. The first son died actually like 5 years old. The second son, John, lived a long life. And his son, John, went to the military and became a general himself and also became an historian. So really cool to see that. But yeah, only one son that they really had together. It was one of the most interesting things is like, so he's at West Point. Like I said, he goes into the officer training kind of thing. And it says one of the most important things is is an officer's wife, actually. And Mamie grew up, I think, in Denver, and she was like from a more wealthier family than Eisenhower. Eisenhower had like 6 brothers. So he had a big family full of boys, and all of them, like, if I remember right, they all went to do really great things. Some of them became presidents of universities and became doctors and stuff. So it was a really successful family overall. But I think it's interesting that Mamie was really good at putting on parties and hosting parties and doing that kind of stuff and organizing those kind of things. And that's because going up the ranks in the military is actually very political. And I thought that was interesting. They kind of went through that in one of the sections of Mamie being really good because she came from this wealthy family that did parties and stuff like that. And so she was good at hosting parties. And so everybody liked going to Eisenhower's house because they always put on a good party. And so that helped them go, hey, let's keep, promoting Eisenhower. So he kind of helped them get promoted in that sense. Now World War I hit, and he was in the Army, and he was training to be a tank commander. But the war was over before he was ever shipped out. He was ready to go ship out to be a tank commander, but he never actually got to fight in battle or lead troops, actually, before that war was done. But he worked with people like Patton, General Patton, or wasn't General Patton at the time, but would be future General Patton. Worked with MacArthur, Marshall, Montgomery, all the big names he had worked with as he was going up the ranks. And got to work underneath a lot of them and got to learn a lot. One of the most interesting things is he went to Panama. And in Panama, there's a guy, like, I think his name is General Connor, who was very smart and was really into military history and planning and stuff like that, and really took him under his wing. And that's where Eisenhower really read more about military history and became really well aware of that, and really got into the planning and logistics of, planning a war and stuff like that, and really learned a lot under him at Panama. One of the funny things is bats would go underneath the door and then fly around your house in Panama, evidently, and Mamie didn't. She didn't like that very much, and she had to whack a lot of bats out of the air, I guess, with a broom or something, because they kept getting in the house. I can't imagine. But anyways, and so they traveled a lot because they went from Panama, they went to Paris for a time being, and they went to London, I think. He spent some time at Fort Leavenworth, and close to where I'm here in Leavenworth. Learned a lot there, and he just went to a lot of officer training. Really was trying to get better as a leader and all that, and he was really learning under everybody and getting really good at it. In fact, when he was in Europe, he wrote like a whole book because he went through all the battle sites of World War I, and he wrote like a whole book about it or something like that. So he was really well aware of like Europe and knew everything, knew kind of all the places in Europe, and was really familiar with Europe, which would help him when he became commander in World War II. Another interesting thing was after World War I, they did this whole convoy from Washington to San Francisco, and it took 2 months to travel. They were on their military vehicles, and it was, I don't know, this like goodwill thing where everybody would stand outside and wave at the troops as they were going across the country. It was kind of this thing. And interesting enough, he's the president who starts the interstate highway. Makes a lot of sense. It took 2 months for him to go from Washington to San Francisco. And when he became president, it's like, we need to figure out some kind of highway system so we can get around the country a little faster. So I didn't know that. That was really interesting that him doing that affected his presidency later on. So that's what I love about museums. You learn little stuff like that is so cool that you're like, oh man, it makes so much sense, why he became who he is. But what I love is, so and he went to like Philippines at one time. Yeah, a lot of traveling and just learning and all that. And then when World War II comes around, he was very valuable because, like I said, he was really good at planning, at the logistics of like where to put your bases, like where to attack, all that kind of stuff. He was really kind of good at, and he knew Europe really well. So when he went to Europe theater, he really knew what he was doing, and that's allowed him to really rise up the ranks in the generals. right before he got into World War II, he actually, first time he became a brigadier general, he never had led troops or done anything like that. So he had to go to Texas, in eastern Texas and in Louisiana. They would have these, what do you call them? They would, take two sides and they would pretend to have like a battle, exercises. They have these military exercises. So the troops, commanders would get, would get better at commanding in a real war, I guess. And that's how they, kind of trained, commanders in war. And they knew World War II was kind of coming up, or that there was a war coming up. And so he went down there and kind of trained in these exercises. So he knew how to, he kind of knew better how to, lead troops and stuff like that. Even though he never did in World War II either, but he was actually really good. And actually, that's how he kind of went up the ranks, because he became brigadier general, and he quickly became like lieutenant general, was a 2-star general, and then 3-star general, because of how good he was. So he was really good at it. But it was interesting because he was really well. He was in London with Marshall. General Marshall was really kind of the one I didn't realize was kind of leading everything. He was Roosevelt's chief of staff, basically. So he was kind of the one really in charge, and he basically put Eisenhower in charge of the European theater and planning things, because he, definitely was the right man. Right. It was interesting because Eisenhower is not like this great military battle commander. He never really led troops. He never fought in war. But yet he was the right guy at the right time because of the knowledge that he accumulated over his years, and the hard work and the studying and all the politicking and whatever. And he was good with diplomacy and all this. I don't know, he just had the right skill set to be a commander in World War II, and it worked really well. And he got into that position, did very well. And Roosevelt, of course, like I said, made him commander of all the troops, all the Allied troops, basically, because of how well he was doing. Also, Churchill liked him a lot too. So it was one of these things where Roosevelt and Churchill both liked him. So he was like the right guy to put. And plus, Marshall was so good as chief of staff that Roosevelt didn't want to lose him as chief of staff. So that's how it's like all these right things kind of came into play for Eisenhower to rise to that level, anyways. And of course, he all these big battles like Omaha, or the beaches of Normandy. He had to plan that. Just a lot of some of the most amazing battles and planning that we've seen. That he was involved with, and of course, we eventually won the war. He was a war hero at that point. Came home, and he, again, because of his leadership skills, it made sense that everybody wanted him for president. It was one of those things where I don't think he was like necessarily want to be president. He actually came home and became the president of Columbia University, and he did that for a little bit, for 4 years, I think. But everybody was like, run for president, run for president. So it's one of those things where everybody was just hounding him to run for president, and he was like he wasn't sure. But then once he decided, he went full force into it, like he was when he was a commander in the Army, and campaigned. And we got the "I Like Ike," which to me is one of the best like campaign slogans, because it's so simple but so memorable. I like Ike, really great. And of course, he won landslide. That's just how popular of a person he was, because he's a war hero. He helped us win, World War II against Hitler. So yeah, it's like nobody could beat him. He was just too popular. And we don't get people like that anymore. You never get someone that's that popular that they can landslide over both parties. It's like a long ago era where somebody's popular for both parties and can just landslide. All our elections are closed right now. We don't have landslides anymore. But and then it kind of goes through, and I'll say this: the World War II stuff is the best stuff in this museum. If you're a World War II historian buff like me, you love reading about World War II, man, this is a great museum for that. There are so many cool things about World War II. To me, that was the majority of the museum was about World War II. And that was the best part of the museum. I absolutely love the World War II stuff, and went over that a lot. His presidency was okay. It wasn't as interesting, I think. Still had some things like he had to end the Korean War. He had a lot of civil rights stuff going on. The Interstate Highway, like I said. Also, just the country was just growing technologically, money-wise. The economy was kind of booming after this point. TVs were becoming a big thing. All kinds of cars. It's like all these things that we have today was really growing at that time. So we really were a growing country economically, I think, and lots of new stuff coming in. And the war was over, and troops were coming back, and we were kind of enjoying life again, some peace finally. But yeah, so some interesting stuff there for sure. But yeah, definitely World War II stuff was the best part. But overall, a really great museum. Really enjoyed myself there. Picked up a couple items. We got the I Like knife there. I always come away with a magnet. This is my magnet of like Eisenhower there. I tried to pick up a book. I couldn't find a good book that was just a good Dwight Eisenhower biography. I just wanted a good biography, you know, of his whole life. That's usually what I try to get. And there was one out there, but for some reason they didn't have it at the bookstore or the gift shop, which I was kind of shocked. So I bought these two books to kind of to try to get what I can out of Eisenhower. This is Crusade in Europe, Personal Account of World War. This was written by Dwight D. Eisenhower about his time in World War II. So I figure that's a pretty good book to get my information about World War II and his time there. And then I also grabbed this book, and this is Eisenhower, the White House years. This is a book about him being president. So I figure I have one book about his World War II service, and I have one book about his presidency, basically. So it covers two major times in his life. I wish I had something that would cover like his, you know, growing up and when he died and all that. I'll see what this all has. But so I got those two books to read to learn more about Eisenhower. But yeah, overall, couldn't recommend this President's Library and Museum enough. If you're ever around Abilene, Kansas, definitely a cool one to go see, and lots of great history there. Besides that, that's my video for today. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you guys liking this video, and appreciate all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a good day.